In the heart of rural Tennessee, where dreams often die with empty bank accounts, a desperate single father's $100 gamble on an abandoned zoo would lead to a discovery so extraordinary, so unthinkable, that it would forever change two lives hanging by the thinnest of threads. This is not just a story of survival against impossible odds, but of an unexpected bond that would prove compassion knows no boundaries, even behind rusted cage bars.
Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you.
Marcus Chen stared at the eviction notice taped to his apartment door, his 7-year-old daughter Emma tugging at his worn jacket sleeve. The single father's construction job had ended 3 months ago, and his savings had dwindled to nothing but loose change and desperate hope. The cramped one-bedroom apartment in downtown Nashville had been their refuge, but even that sanctuary was slipping away. Emma's eyes, bright despite their circumstances, looked up at her father with unwavering trust. She didn't fully understand why they'd been eating canned soup for weeks, or why Daddy's phone calls always ended with him rubbing his temples. All she knew was that her father had promised everything would be okay, and she believed him with the fierce faith only a child could possess. Marcus had spent countless nights scrolling through job listings, rental ads, and get-rich-quick schemes that promised easy money. His laptop, held together with electrical tape, displayed the same rejections and dead ends. But today, buried deep in the classified section of a local newspaper he'd found in a coffee shop, something caught his eye. Abandoned petting zoo, must sell immediately, $100 OBO. The ad was brief, almost dismissive, but it sparked something in Marcus's chest. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe it was the memory of Emma's face lighting up at the Nashville Zoo last year before money got tight. The property came with 12 acres and several structures. Even if the animal enclosures were worthless, the land alone might be worth something. Little did Marcus know that his $100 leap of faith would lead him to discover something in the old gorilla enclosure that would challenge everything he thought he knew about hope, survival, and the unexpected places where miracles hide. Sometimes the most extraordinary stories begin with the most ordinary desperation, and Marcus Chen was about to learn that lesson in the most unthinkable way. The drive to Willow Creek took 2 hours in Marcus's sputtering Honda. Emma pressed against the window, counting cows and asking endless questions about their new adventure. She had no idea they were gambling their last $100 on a property sight unseen. Her innocent excitement about maybe seeing animals made Marcus's chest tight with both love and terror. When they finally pulled up to the rusted gates of Sunset Safari Petting Zoo, Emma's face fell. The place looked like something from a post-apocalyptic movie. Weeds had reclaimed most of the pathways, and several enclosure fences had collapsed entirely. A faded sign hung crooked, barely clinging to its posts like a dying wish. "Daddy, where are all the animals?" Emma whispered, her small hand finding his. Marcus knelt down to her level, forcing a smile he didn't feel. "Maybe they're hiding, sweetheart. We're explorers now, remember?" Emma nodded solemnly, her trust in him absolute and heartbreaking. She was too young to understand that this crumbling zoo represented their last chance, too innocent to realize that if this gamble failed, they might be sleeping in their car within days. As they walked through the broken gates together, Emma's wonder remained intact despite the decay around them. She pointed excitedly at empty enclosures, imagining the animals that once lived there. Her resilience in the face of their desperate situation reminded Marcus why he had to keep fighting. Neither of them could have imagined that Emma's pure heart and unshakable faith in her father would soon play a crucial role in the most extraordinary discovery of their lives. As Marcus and Emma explored deeper into the abandoned zoo, the reality of their situation began to sink in with crushing weight. Every step revealed more damage, more decay, more evidence that his $100 investment might have been the final nail in their financial coffin.
The petting zoo's former office was a disaster zone of water damage and mold. Old receipts and veterinary records scattered across the floor told the story of a business that had struggled for years before finally surrendering to bankruptcy. The previous owner had clearly abandoned this place in desperation, just like Marcus was about to abandon his last hope. Emma tried to stay positive, but even her 7-year-old optimism was wavering as they passed enclosure after empty enclosure. The rabbit hutches were collapsed, the duck pond was dry and cracked, and the small barn that once housed goats was missing half its roof. With each devastating discovery, Marcus felt the walls of impossibility closing in around them. They had nowhere else to go, no backup plan, and now no money left for rent, food, or gas to get back home. The weight of his daughter's future pressed down on his shoulders like a physical force. The abandoned zoo wasn't just financially worthless, it was a symbol of failure, a graveyard of broken dreams that marred his own crumbling life. Every collapsed fence and rusted gate seemed to whisper the same message: some gambles don't pay off. Some desperate moves lead only to deeper desperation. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the desolate property, Marcus realized they might have to spend the night here. The threat wasn't just financial anymore, it was existential. As darkness crept across the abandoned zoo, Marcus sat on a broken bench with his head in his hands, finally allowing the full weight of their situation to crush down on him. Emma had fallen asleep curled up beside him, her small body shivering in the evening chill. They had no money for a motel, barely enough gas to get home, and home was about to be taken away anyway. The silence of the empty zoo was deafening, broken only by the distant sound of wind rattling through broken enclosures. This was it, rock bottom. Marcus had failed as a provider, as a father, as a man. His daughter deserved so much better than a parent who gambled their last $100 on a pipe dream. Then, cutting through the oppressive quiet like a knife, came a sound that made Marcus's blood freeze. It was low, mournful, and unmistakably alive. A deep, rhythmic breathing that seemed to echo from somewhere deep within the zoo's shadows. Emma stirred beside him, her eyes fluttering open. "Daddy, what was that?" Marcus held his breath, straining to listen. There it was again, the sound of something large, something breathing, something that shouldn't exist in this abandoned place. His heart hammered against his ribs as the realization hit him like a physical blow. They were not alone. The sound came again, louder this time, and Marcus felt every instinct screaming at him to grab Emma and run. But his car keys were in his pocket, his tank was nearly empty, and they had nowhere left to run to. Whatever was making that sound in the darkness, they were about to face it, whether they wanted to or not. Marcus had never considered himself brave. His entire life had been about playing it safe, following rules, taking the predictable path. Construction work was steady, not exciting. Raising Emma alone meant being cautious, not heroic. He was just a regular guy trying to survive in a world that kept knocking him down. Now, with his daughter depending on him and strange sounds echoing through the darkness, every fiber of his being screamed to retreat. This wasn't his problem. Whatever was lurking in the shadows of this abandoned zoo wasn't his responsibility. He was a father, not an explorer. His job was to protect Emma, not investigate mysterious noises. But as the breathing grew more distinct, Marcus found himself torn between two powerful instincts. The father in him wanted to scoop up Emma and drive away as fast as his dying Honda would take them. The desperate man with nowhere left to go realized that running away meant certain homelessness and hunger for his daughter. "Daddy, I'm scared," Emma whispered, gripping his arm with tiny fingers. Marcus looked down at her trusting eyes, the same eyes that had believed him when he promised everything would be okay.
He had already failed her in so many ways. Lost his job, spent their last money on this worthless property, brought her to this creepy place in the dark.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
But maybe, just maybe, this was his chance to finally be the father she deserved. Maybe facing the unknown was better than running toward the certainty of failure. Marcus Chen had never been anyone's hero, but as he stood up and took Emma's small hand in his, something inside him shifted toward courage. With Emma's flashlight app cutting through the darkness, Marcus followed the sound deeper into the zoo. His heart pounded with each step, but something stronger than fear was driving him forward now, the desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, this nightmare could somehow become their salvation. The breathing led them to the back corner of the property where a large concrete enclosure stood partially hidden by overgrown trees. Unlike the other abandoned areas, this structure seemed more solid, more permanent. A weathered sign hung askew on the fence. Gorilla habitat. Do not feed. "A gorilla, Daddy?" Emma whispered, her fear mixing with wonder. Marcus approached the reinforced fence cautiously. The enclosure was massive, built to house something powerful, but as his eyes adjusted to the moonlight filtering through the trees, he realized the truth was far more complex than a simple abandoned animal. Inside the enclosure, huddled in the corner, was indeed a gorilla, but this wasn't a wild, dangerous beast. This was a creature in desperate need. The animal was clearly malnourished, its breathing labored, and around its neck was a thick chain attached to a concrete block, preventing it from reaching the water source at the far end of the enclosure. "Oh my God," Marcus breathed, understanding flooding through him. Someone had abandoned this gorilla here, left it to die slowly of thirst and starvation. The animal's eyes met his through the fence, and Marcus saw something he recognized, the same desperate plea for help that he'd been carrying in his own heart. In that moment, Marcus Chen made a choice that would change both their lives forever. Marcus had never faced anything more dangerous than an angry construction supervisor. But looking at the dying gorilla chained in the corner, he knew he couldn't walk away. The enclosure's gate was secured with a heavy padlock, but years of rust and weather had weakened the metal. "Emma, stay back by that tree," he instructed, his voice steadier than he felt. Using a broken piece of rebar from a collapsed fence, Marcus worked at the lock with desperate determination. His hands shook as he pried and twisted, the metal cutting into his palms. Each minute that passed was another minute the gorilla suffered, another minute closer to death for both of them. The lock finally gave way with a sharp crack that echoed through the night. As Marcus stepped into the enclosure, the massive silverback, despite his weakened state, rose to his full height. Even malnourished, the animal was intimidating, easily 3 times Marcus's weight. "Easy, buddy," Marcus whispered, approaching slowly with his hands visible. "I'm here to help." The gorilla's eyes never left him, but there was no aggression, only watchful caution and a flicker of something that looked like hope. Marcus knelt beside the concrete block, examining the heavy chain. The metal links were thick, designed to hold something this powerful, but the attachment point had rusted. Working with the same rebar, Marcus began chipping away at the corroded metal. His shoulders burned, his hands bled, and sweat stung his eyes, but he didn't stop. The gorilla watched every movement, occasionally making soft rumbling sounds that seemed more like encouragement than threat. This was his confrontation with impossibility, and he was winning. After what felt like hours, the chain finally snapped free with a metallic ring that seemed to echo with liberation itself. The gorilla immediately moved toward the water source, drinking deeply while keeping one eye on Marcus. But as the massive animal quenched his thirst, Marcus noticed something extraordinary happening.
Emma had crept closer, despite his earlier instructions to stay back. She stood just outside the enclosure gate, her small hands gripping the fence bars, watching with the fearless curiosity that only children possess. "Daddy, he's beautiful," she whispered. The gorilla heard her voice and turned, tilting his massive head as he studied the little girl. Then something magical happened. The animal approached the fence where Emma stood and gently extended one enormous finger through the bars. Without hesitation, Emma reached out and touched it. Marcus held his breath, every parental instinct screaming danger, but what he witnessed defied everything he thought he knew about wild animals. The gorilla was being incredibly gentle, allowing this tiny human to make contact as if he understood her innocence. "He's saying thank you, Daddy," Emma said, with the simple wisdom of childhood. In that moment, Marcus realized they had found something more valuable than any business opportunity or financial salvation. They had discovered a living, breathing miracle that needed them as much as they needed hope. The gorilla looked at Marcus over Emma's head, and in those intelligent eyes, Marcus saw not just gratitude, but a proposal. This wasn't just about rescue anymore. It was about partnership, about three lost souls finding each other in the darkness and choosing to build something beautiful together. As dawn broke over their unlikely sanctuary, Marcus sat with Emma beside the enclosure, watching their new friend enjoy his first real meal in who knows how long. They'd found some old fruit in the zoo's emergency supply shed, and the gorilla ate with dignified gratitude. "What are we going to name him, Daddy?" Emma asked, already planning their future together. "How about Hope?" Marcus suggested, the word carrying more weight than any name he'd ever spoken. By mid-morning, Marcus had made the calls that would change everything. The local news station arrived first, followed by wildlife experts, veterinarians, and zoo officials from Nashville. What they discovered made headlines across the state. Local hero saves abandoned gorilla. Father and daughter become unlikely animal rescuers. Dr. Sarah Martinez from the Tennessee Wildlife Sanctuary examined Hope with amazement. "This gorilla is a rare western lowland silverback, probably worth $500,000. Someone illegally owned him and abandoned him here when they couldn't afford his care anymore." The sanctuary offered Marcus a job immediately, head caretaker with housing included on the grounds. The state provided emergency funding to restore part of the zoo as a legitimate rescue facility. Suddenly, Marcus's $100 gamble had transformed into a six-figure opportunity. But the real reward was watching Emma's face light up every morning when Hope greeted her at the fence. The gorilla had learned her routine, waiting patiently for her good morning touch through the bars. "He knew we needed each other," Emma said simply, and Marcus realized his 7-year-old daughter understood something profound about destiny, hope, and the unexpected places where miracles hide. 2 years later, the Hope Haven Wildlife Sanctuary thrives as one of Tennessee's premier rescue facilities. Marcus now manages a team of 12 employees, and Emma has become the sanctuary's youngest volunteer, teaching other children about compassion and conservation. Their story has inspired thousands of visitors and millions of social media followers who tune in daily to watch Emma and Hope's morning routine. But the true magic isn't in the headlines or the success story. It's in the quiet moments when Marcus watches his daughter communicate with Hope through their own special language of gestures and gentle sounds. The gorilla, now healthy and magnificent, has become more than just a rescued animal. He's become a bridge between species, a living reminder that understanding transcends words. The sanctuary has rescued dozens of other abandoned animals, each one finding safety because Marcus chose compassion over fear that dark night. Local schools bring children to learn about wildlife protection, and Emma often tells their story,
explaining how sometimes the scariest moments lead to the most beautiful discoveries. Every evening, as the sun sets over Hope Haven, Marcus and Emma sit on the same bench where they once faced homelessness and despair. Hope approaches the fence, extends his massive hand, and Emma places her small palm against his. It's a ritual of gratitude, a daily reminder that miracles often come disguised as problems. Marcus learned that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting with compassion despite that fear. His $100 gamble didn't just save a gorilla's life. It taught them both that when we open our hearts to help others, we often discover exactly what we needed to save ourselves. In a world that often feels cold and disconnected, their story proves that extraordinary bonds can form in the most unexpected places, and that sometimes the greatest adventures begin when we choose hope over fear.
Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.